Imagine you are a visitor in the year 1500. You are walking through the sun-drenched and bustling streets of Florence. You see a tall and striking man with flowing golden hair and a beard that seems to glow in the light. He is wearing a vibrant pink silk tunic that stands out against the dusty clothes of the workers around him. He carries a small wooden box under his arm and has a mischievous glint in his eye. Suddenly, he stops. He opens the lid and a dragon leaps out. It is hissing and growling and sending the crowd screaming in terror. But as the panic settles, you realize it is a prank. It is a pet lizard that this man has meticulously decorated with shimmering fish scales and a tiny goat beard. He even added wings filled with liquid mercury so they vibrate with every step the creature takes. This man was Leonardo da Vinci. He was a person who blurred the lines between reality and fantasy so perfectly that even his jokes were masterpieces of engineering. Today on Nexus, we go beyond the genius label. We dive into the mind of the most relentlessly curious man who ever lived. He was not just a painter. He was a weapons designer and a theatrical master of ceremonies. He was a pioneering anatomist and a psychological observer who saw the world in high definition 5 centuries before the camera was invented. Leonardo was born in 1452. He started life with what many considered a legal handicap. He was an illegitimate child and the son of nobody. His father was a successful and wealthy notary. But because Leonardo was born out of wedlock, he was legally barred from following the family profession. He could not be a lawyer, and he could not go to a prestigious university to study Latin or Greek. For anyone else, this would be a dead end. For Leonardo, it was his greatest liberation. He called himself a man without letters. While other children were trapped inside dark classrooms, memorizing dusty, ancient texts, Leonardo was wandering the hills. He spent his days observing how the sunlight hit the water and how a dragonfly's wings beat in figure eights. He became a disciple of experience. He learned that nature was a far better teacher than any professor at the age of 14. Leonardo's father finally realized the boy's sketches were more than just doodles. He sent him to the most innovative industrial hub in Florence. This was the studio of Andrea del Verrocchio. This studio was not just an art school. It was the Silicon Valley of the Renaissance. It was a place where they cast massive bronze church bells and designed jewelry for the powerful. They even engineered the massive golden sphere that sits on top of the Florence Cathedral. In this workshop, Leonardo did not just learn to paint. He learned chemistry and metallurgy and the physics of weight and balance. There is a famous legend from this time. Verrocchio was working on a painting called The Baptism of Christ. He asked young Leonardo to paint just one angel in the corner. When Leonardo finished, the angel was incredibly lifelike. Its skin looked so much more like actual flesh than anything the master had ever produced. Legend says that Verrocchio put down his brushes and swore he would never paint again. Leonardo had surpassed his master before he was 20. But painting was never enough for him. He wanted to understand the soul of the machine. By 1482, Leonardo felt stifled by the traditional art scene of a Ceauseslas. He wanted to build things that moved and things that won wars. So he did something radical. He wrote the world's first professional resume. He sent a letter to the ruthless Duke of Milan. In this letter, he did not brag about his art. He wrote 10 numbered paragraphs detailing his military genius. He claimed he could build armored tanks and giant crossbows and secret tunnels that could be dug under moats without a sound. It was only in the very final sentence that he added that he could also paint as well as any other. He got the job. But for the next 2 decades, the Duke used him as a party planner. Leonardo became the personal stage designer for the court. But do not let that fool you. Leonardo used the court's massive budget to fund his scientific experiments. He built a giant mechanical set where the planets actually moved. He designed the first ever robots. He even made a mechanical lion that could walk forward and open its chest to reveal fresh flowers. Most of the war machine sketches we see today were actually theatrical props designed to awe an audience. For Leonardo, the world was a stage, and engineering was the magic behind the curtain. Now, let us talk about the notebooks. If you could hold his journals today, you would be holding the most disorganized and brilliant documents in human history. Leonardo left behind over 7,000 pages of notes. They are a chaotic mix of ideas. He wrote in mirror writing, which means he wrote backwards from right to left. Some people think this was a secret code. But the truth is much more human. Leonardo was left-handed. Writing backwards prevented him from smearing the wet ink with his hand as he moved across the page. His notebooks are filled with the most bizarre to-do lists you have ever seen. One page says to observe the goose's foot. Another says to describe the tongue of the woodpecker. Why the woodpecker? Because Leonardo wanted to understand how a creature could slam its head into a tree without getting a concussion. He discovered that the bird's tongue actually wraps around its entire skull to act as a shock absorber. He was doing advanced science centuries before the word even existed. He spent his nights in dark basements studying over 30 human bodies. He peeled back layers of skin just to see how a heart valve worked or how a nerve triggered an emotion. This leads us to his most famous work, the Mona Lisa. Many people look at her smile and call it a mystery. But Leonardo did not think it was a mystery. He thought it was anatomy. In his notebooks, you can see drawings where he mapped every single tiny muscle around the human lips. He discovered that the muscles that move the corners of the mouth are different from the ones that lift the center. He painted the Mona Lisa using a technique called sfumato. This means a smoky blurring of the edges. Because he understood how eyes work, he knew that the human eye sees shadows better on the edges of our vision. When you look directly at her mouth, the smile seems to fade. But when your eyes wander to her eyes, the smile reappears. She is not just a woman. She is a living optical illusion. But Leonardo's life was not just a series of successes. He was a man of deep contradictions. He was a strict vegetarian who would buy caged birds just to feel the joy of setting them free. Yet he designed terrifying weapons for war. He was also a massive procrastinator. He famously spent years on the Last Supper. Sometimes he would stand in front of the wall for hours without making a single brushstroke. He never finished the majority of his projects. He died feeling like a failure and apologizing to God for leaving so much work undone. But did he really fail? He designed a helicopter in the year 1490. He designed a submarine and a diving suit and a parachute. In the year 2000, a skydiver actually built a parachute based on Leonardo's sketches. Everyone told him it would not work because it was shaped like a pyramid. He jumped anyway, and it worked perfectly. Leonardo was not a magician. He was simply a human being who refused to stop asking why. He saw no walls between the beauty of a flower and the mechanics of a gear. Leonardo died in France in 1519. Legend says he died in the arms of the king. He left us with a legacy that defines what it means to be a genius. He reminds us that the connection between science and art is where true brilliance lives. He did not just want to paint the world. He wanted to know how it worked and how it could be made better. This has been our introduction to the master of Vinci. In our next episode, we will look at his great rival, Michelangelo. But for now, take a lesson from Leonardo. Look at the sky today and do not just see the color blue. Ask yourself why it is blue. I am your host for Nexus, and the story is all connected. Stay curious.